Oh, I thought my fingers were going to click then. I thought it would have been a good start to the video. Gentlemen, welcome back to another video. If this is your first time here, our channel is about dating in Ukraine, whether it's using a romance company or a matchmaker, or whether you're just going to go over there and you're just going to blast through Tinder and hit the clubs. I went over there and I did it. Luba, who is normally on my channel, but today she can't make it, she's been working in this industry, matchmaking couples, for about 10 years. So if you are interested in doing that, subscribe to the channel and click the bell button so you get the notifications. But today, I want to talk to you about something that you're going to come into. And there's no doubt in my mind, if you go and do this properly, this will happen to you, or you will do it to someone else. And that is rejection. Rejection. Now, when I started out dating in Ukraine, which was a couple of years ago now, there are some things that I learn along the way. There are many things that I learn, and I share some of those things with you guys because I hope that it can help some of you guys out there. And so when it comes to rejection, right, and it would have to be like one of the worst feelings that any human, I won't say any man, but any human, a woman, child, or probably even a dog could feel if they're feeling as though they're not being accepted or that they're rejected. And of course that feeling is going to lead to a sense of not being accepted, right? But here's the thing you have to think about when it comes to rejection. Now I want to say it now, but I want you to think about it throughout this video. And especially when you're dating over in Ukraine, when it comes to rejection, you have to get to it as fast as possible. That should actually be your number one goal, is to either reject or be rejected, instead of trying to shy away from rejection. And a lot of guys do this, right? Because they spend a lot of money, a lot of time going on one of these romance tours or matchmakers or whatever, and maybe they drop 10 grand on a trip. And they feel like that they need to have something for that money, right? Because nobody wants to spend 10 grand and have nothing for it. And sometimes they hang on to things that are not quite right for them because maybe they're afraid of that rejection, so they continue to pursue something that in the end it's going to lead to a rejection anyway, or they don't want to reject because they really want something that maybe is not quite right for them. And quite often these relationships form under extreme pressure, and that pressure quite often comes from, not just the money and time that's invested, but because people really want it. Like I've been there and I've done it. Like anything I say to you is not something I read in a book or saw online or anything like that. It's because I went and did it myself. And if you think about rejection as not something that you can use to get closer to your goal, you'll think about it as something that's holding you back from your goal. The idea behind the saying, get to rejection as fast as possible, means that you can get through this part here, this person that's not right for you. People hold on to this relationship for as long as possible, like even when it's like absolutely shit, like they're fighting from the start, they don't see eye to eye, their goals and values, I've talked about it in other videos before, these goals and values cannot contradict each other. If they start to clash, it's never going to go well. As shitty as it sounds, 99.9% of relationships are bell curves. And the least amount of goals and values you have at the start, the sharper the bell curve is. So you want the bell curve to go like this over many, many decades, and then by the time it starts to drop off, you realize that you're too old to give a fuck anyway. So you just kind of just stay in the relationship. You're like 70 years old and it's like, yeah, well, it's been like this, we live with it. But if it's steep at the start, with these problems of not agreeing with things and the goals and values, big thing, goals and values. If those things are going to, they don't have to be the same. Okay, when I say goals and values, I was talking to someone a little while ago and they were saying we don't have the same goals and values. That's fine. You don't have to have the same goals and values, but they can't contradict each other. They can't clash. Otherwise, there's going to be massive compromise and the relationship is going to fall apart. And when you have these fights at the start, this bell curve is rather short, the peak is rather close to the time where you are at the moment, and it's going to go like this. And at some point over here, you're going to break up. The rejection is going to come, whether you break up with her or she breaks up with you. You want to get to rejection as fast as possible. That way you can say next, and then next again and next again. And each time you say next, you're going to learn something new. Believe me, just trust me when I say this. You'll learn something from every rejection. Either you reject a woman, she rejects you, or something doesn't work out or whatever happens. You'll learn something and you'll think, what the hell was I thinking when I did this? She definitely wasn't right for me, or she was the wrong person, or I was chasing the wrong thing, or whatever it is. The faster you can get to that rejection, the faster you can move on to the next one, and then the next one. You have no idea how many rejections you're going to have to go through, whether you're rejecting her or she's rejecting you, before you finally get to something where you actually can form a relationship for the long term, not just a short relationship, for the long term. You know, guys spend a lot of money when they come over here to do this. And if you think about this for a second, and nobody ever does, and I always like to think about things over here and things that most people wouldn't normally think about. Think about this for a second, right? Like, guys go to, say, like one of these romance companies, and they may date a woman for a few weeks, a month, whatever. Then they realize goals and values aren't in line. They're not quite suited for each other. She ghosts him, and he gets a feeling of rejection. And instead of kind of going, okay, that was that, we learned something from that, I'll try something else next time. Instead of doing that, like, they can sort of like go, what's the word? They kind of go into a bit of a shell, and some of them get resentful of Ukrainian women or Ukrainian culture, that they're scammers or whatever it is. But quite often it's like the guy put himself into that position by buying, you know, fancy gifts and all that sort of stuff. But here's something else to think about. When you see some of these videos online of these guys saying, like, you know, if you add up all the women that I've dated in my whole life, it still is less than the woman that I dated in the last 10 days. Think about this for a second. If you were to ask any one of those women who attended that same couple of days or whatever event, and you were said, how did you feel about that? I'd say that 97% of them would have said, out of all the rejections that I've had in my life, I've never had more than I've had in the last couple of days. The key is to embrace the rejection. Either side, it doesn't actually matter, but embrace it and make it part of your journey. Learn from it. If you get rejected, why? What did you do? If you reject the woman, why? Why did you make that wrong decision? There's a lesson in every single part of it. And if you try and look at it and analyze it and try and figure out what you did wrong, you can learn from it and you can move on and say, next, get on to the next rejection. If anybody ever gives you shit about being rejected or makes you feel like, haha, you were rejected, these guys have zero experience when it comes to relationships. If they really understood about trying to find someone that is actually suited for you, not just a woman that you're going to divorce later on, these guys have absolutely no idea. By them saying, you know, like laughing or saying anything bad, not them saying that that would happen, but if anybody is looking at you being rejected as a bad thing, they don't even get the opportunity to be rejected. There's no woman that's going to reject them, and they don't get the opportunity to reject any woman because they don't have any opportunities. So don't let anybody make you feel like being rejected is a bad thing. Sure, there may be things you need to work on for yourself, but if you're not being rejected, then you're not getting closer to where you're actually supposed to be. You're not getting closer to finding the woman that you are looking for. And I'll tell you a quick story. When I was about 13 or 14, I just started snowboarding. And I met up with some guys. They were a bit older than me. And they were really good. And they were talking about backflips and all sorts of cool stuff. And then I piped up and I said, well, you know what? Today, I didn't even fall off. And they all went silent. And one of them said to me, well, you obviously weren't trying hard enough. And it resonated with me. He was right. I wasn't trying hard enough to fall off. Rejection, similar to failure, can be the greatest lessons in life. And all it does is it gets you a little bit closer to what you are actually looking for. My thoughts anyway when it comes to being rejected or rejecting. If you guys like the video, please push the thumbs up button and the subscribe button and the bell button, and I'll see you guys next time.